Powered by Red Media in partnership with TSN, it is season 6 of the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast, and it is presented by our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey. New to their amazing invitation series is the Canadian Club Classic 18-year-old high-proof, full-bodied whiskey as the aromas of caramel, toffee, spicy vanilla, rich oak, and then a butterscotch finish that is, so smooth. Invite your senses to an elevated Canadian whiskey experience with Canadian Club. Ray Ferraro is at home, at least temporarily, for the weekend. On Tuesday, we talked about in our last episode, you're looking forward to Halloween. So you had a good Halloween with Enzo and the family. Lots of people came by the Ferraro Granado house.
Yeah, so Riley's 17. Him and his buddies went out and did whatever they did. Reese went out with his couple of his clan at 14. They were out. They collected some candy, and then Enzo, our grandson, was here. So this is the heyday of Halloween, right? Like 8 to 12. This is when you're like, he was fired up. And I got a little bowl over there of Coffee Crisp and Kit Kat, which was what I told him that No needs is, and he said, I got you some. And he gets his tonsils out today, though. So big day. Or gets them shaved or whatever they do now. And we had like 50 or 60 people. It was awesome. I love it. I like the dog hates it. Ollie goes wild.
Dog, because the doorbell and all of the shenanigans.
But it was a good night. It was really good. It was fun.
So we had an interesting night.
Holly wanted the lights off, right?
Yeah, well, because I wasn't here. We had the regional Leafs Kraken game, so I wasn't here. So Holly and Mason managed that. They got through it. Everything was fine. So I arrive on scene at TSN. Basically, as soon as I get there, I don't know, like, are you scared easily? Like, if you're walking down the hallway and Cammy jumps out, like, are you, like, clawing up the wall or not really? Not easily scared?
No, not that bad. Not that bad. But I get startled, sure.
Sure. Yeah. And I don't know if you saw the spoof, but there's big Luke Wilson, who's like 6'8", in a Jason costume with the knives, hiding behind something. So I walk out of my little dressing area into the green room, and this behemoth jumps out, scares the crap out of me, right? And Cheryl Pounder and Jeff O'Neill. Okay, so I think, all right, all the stuff is over. Let's get on with the rest of the night. Then, and I knew prior to that they were taping what they call a cold open. And so what a cold open is the show just opens up. It's pre-recorded, but it opens up to us on the panel. There's no tease, music, any of that, right? Mm-hmm. Well, the cold open in this case, so I knew I had to be on set at a certain time with Cheryl and James. And because it's Halloween, I knew that O'Neill would have something planned and he'd be up to something. He walks in the studio. I don't know if you saw the video, in the Tooth Fairy costume. Did you see it? How ridiculous was that?
Oh, he looked great.
Okay. So that is the after. The before is I'm in the green, just Jeff and I. And he's in this costume. So I've had a look and I'm prepared for it. So there was some acting involved on set. He and I are sitting in the green room in comfy chairs, diagonally, right? So there's a table between us. So that's fine, but the chair beside me is open right across from Jeff. Cheryl walks in and thankfully goes into another room to drop her bag off, whatever. But I know she's going to sit in this chair. I drop my pen. I go to grab my pen and I look over and O's got his left leg strung over the arm of the chair. He's got a hole in his boxers. And there is junk hanging out everywhere.
Oh, Jesus. Oh.
And Cheryl is about to sit down, and I'm like, put your leg down. He looks at me. I'm like, put your leg down. He doesn't do, put your leg down. So he finally looks down, and there was a wardrobe malfunction. So he finally puts his leg down, and now Cheryl is like, what was that all about? And I explained to her what's going on here, and she goes, dodged one there. Did you ever?
Did she ever? But
Although,
what is O like? Is like, come on,
uh,
O.
I don't
But
know,
that
man.
is
But
O, isn't it? That is O. Yeah,
that is typical of O. So
yeah.
that was, I mean, of all the goofiness that should happen go on a Halloween, not that I ever want to, I'm never not going to see O in that costume or the parts that I ended up seeing, whatever. But that was the craziness of the night in the green room. Good episode ahead here, Ray. We've got Washington Capitals head coach Spencer Carberry joining us in this episode of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast. Man, he just gets it, right? Not just from a media perspective. I don't know that he knows anything other than to be an honest and good-natured guy. That just seems how he's built.
He is. He has got energy, and even when he's, we had their playoff series last year against the Rangers, and um, they knew they were in tough, right? They ended up getting swept, but
Yeah.
and you could, coaches are different in the regular season. As the season goes on and the pressure gets bigger, and then you get to the playoffs, but his demeanor is
Yeah.
always like, I can see why players like being around him. Like he's an idea guy. He's a
Mm.
really good communicator. He's he there's a toughness to him
Oh,
that's
yeah.
there too. And
Yeah.
like I think he's going to have a really good coaching career. I don't know how the hell they got into playoffs last year. They scored 216 goals. Like but they got in. And this
Yeah.
year they look like they're a good team. Like they really
Mm.
do. And he's one of the good guys. He really is. He's one of the good ones, and really, he's got a great way about him. I think that people like the interview. They will for
Yeah.
sure, because he's just going to be like, you'll just see there's an energy about him.
Yeah, that's coming up in this episode of Ray and Dregs. Let's check out our headlines, Ray, brought to us by Tim Hortons. The Tim's NHL Hockey Challenge is back in the Tim Hortons app. Every game day, you pick your players that you think are going to score for your chance at daily and monthly prizes, including a 2025 Hyundai Tucson. That's the season end grand prize. So download the Tim's app today. It's free, it's easy to play, and best of all, it's fun to play. All right, what isn't fun is what's going on around the Boston Bruins. I mean, this Boston team floundering right now. One win in their last six, Ray. 2-0 loss to the Flyers earlier in the week. Jeremy Swayman gave up 6 on, I guess, 21 shots Thursday in an 8-2 loss to the Carolina Hurricanes. Jim Montgomery's frustration is obvious and more on display in game on the bench. Now, he's constantly mixing lines in search of chemistry. That's not new to Monty. Monty does that when his team is winning, but right now it just feels like he's at a loss and that team literally is losing.
When the players start to get frustrated, and then with frustration goes a lack of confidence, which Montgomery has said is quite significant with their team, like just in the first part of the season here. And then, one thing feeds the next, right? And then frustration gets greater. Lack of confidence gets worse. Coach gets frustrated. Coach starts, as you say, like you start seeing it. That's a dangerous time. And the danger of it is that it spirals into a place that there's only two options. It's a trade, or like a big trade, or you change the coach. Expectations are super high always in Boston. Now, I was one of the people that thought that the Bruins would take a significant back step last year. When David Krejci and Patrice Bergeron retired, I thought, like, there's no way they can be a 100-point team. And they were.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the step back. Like, maybe it was just delayed a year. But if you go through them now, they're giving up goals like crazy. They got a bunch of guys that don't score for them. Like before last night's game, McAvoy didn't have a point in 8. He didn't get one last night. Lindholm doesn't have a point in 8. Elias Lindholm. Charlie Coyle's got 1 point in 10 games, 11 games. Marchand scored last night. He's got 2 goals in 11. Like
Yeah.
their lack of Pavel Zacha's had a terrible start. Their lack of offense gets exploited by their center position. They don't have creative people up the middle of the ice. And last year they checked and grinded their way to a really good year. And this year I think it's exposed a little bit. They spent a lot of money in the offseason. You know, first 7 games of the year, Zadorov took a penalty. Right? That's not what they spent 6 years and $30 million bucks on. They're like, oh boy. He's in their third pair with Andrew Peeke. Lindholm was supposed to be a centerman that could play in your top 2, and he can. He's a good player, but he's not an 80-point player. Lindholm is a 50 to 60-point player. And they got that in Charlie Coyle. So now you're like, where's the offense going to come from? In the past, it's been, Pasternak. I call him an independent contractor because he can score all by himself. He doesn't need other people around him. He seems to create his own offense. But he's always kind of had the ability that he was either with a Krejci or a Bergeron or a Marchand. Marchand's 36. He's come off of 3 surgeries this summer. Like, how good could he feel? Like, not very. So this is a mess. And it started in camp with Swayman's holdout. The frustration built through the lack of early season success. And as you said, you see it on the coach, and that's bad news. That's not a good look and a good feel.
So you wondered about the Boston Bruins, a year ago, taking that step back. And I'm in the group that thought, maybe doesn't anymore, it's still early, that the Carolina Hurricanes were poised to take a step back. And that doesn't appear to be the case even a little bit. Like in the Metropolitan, of course, they're in that fight for top spot, but they're in the fight for top spot overall in the East. I mean, is this team surprising you to some degree?
It is. I thought, they lost Pesci as a free agent. He's gone. Brent Burns, is he 39 or 38?
Yeah, he's up there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, man, maybe this is the year that these things build up and start to chip away a little bit at a team that is built 100% in the image of their coach. Like Carolina is fast and intense, and man, they are playing some great hockey right now. Svechnikov is a hell of a player. Aho's he's a fabulous player. The guy that's really had a great start's Marty Necas, and he's an electrifying player when he plays. Like, he can kind of dive in and out a little bit, but I think he's getting older. Like, the consistency comes to them, comes to players a little bit. Some guys quicker, some guys maybe a little later, but my God, they're a good team. I thought they might step back too. We'll see how they are depth-wise when a couple of guys, inevitably get banged up. But man, they are impressive. That was not even close last night. They were on a different level.
All right, let's shift to the West. The Oilers making headlines this week, right? Yep. I mean, Connor McDavid hurt earlier in the week. The Oilers announced that he's likely going to be out 2 to 3 weeks, conservatively, with an ankle injury. And then we learned that Connor McDavid is on the ice Thursday morning. So he's obviously testing his pain threshold to see how the ankle feels. So now we're careful in establishing a return deadline or timeline. Some think it could be just over a week. Some think it could be inside a week. But if it's less than 2 weeks, I mean, that is an absolute grand slam for the Oilers and the fan base. But in the meantime, you've got that going on while Leon Draisaitl kicks into high gear with the rest of them, with Hyman and Arvidsson contributing, and the Oilers playing better in a big win against Nashville.
Yeah, the McDavid thing, of course, that's quiet and tight. They put out a timeline, and the one thing we do know just from watching players over time is You could feel pretty good with a high ankle, like feel pretty good that you're ready to come back. You catch a toe in the ice and you spiral backwards a little bit. And so obviously they're going to be careful and cautious, but he's going to push to be back as quick as he can. And I'm sure at some point there'll be a little tug of war there about, are you ready? Are you not really? Are you ready? But that's obviously great news that he's even able to test it. They must have been pumped that the day after evaluation was so good. As for Draisaitl, man, that guy's he's a proud guy. He's stubborn. And, I'm guessing when he sees McDavid go out, he's like, he hears what people say. Oh yeah, McDavid makes Draisaitl, and there's always that little ridiculous buzz around that. And he's like, we need a step up here. Like there's a lot of guys think it, right? Oh gee, we all got to plug along and fill in for the superstar that's out, but Draisaitl can do it.
Yeah.
Like the play he made to Arvidsson. I mean, it's a wide open net. It's beautiful play. His breakaway, his release is like, well, it's just elite. It's top shelf. And I wasn't really surprised as I'm watching the game last night that he had his A game. That it was gonna come. Like it was gonna be there. They needed him to have it. And Zach Hyman's not going to score 54 goals every year, but he's not going to get 0 either. Right. And so he gets one pretty nice goal. He had 3 or 4 really good chances last night too. So maybe he can exhale a little bit too. But for Edmonton, it was a good day yesterday. McDavid's news to the game.
Yeah. And how about the fight? We don't glorify fighting, but every once in a while your attention is drawn. And that was the case with Podkolzin. You've watched this young guy play a lot over the years. So in our, kind of pregame discussion here, I asked, how many times you've seen him fight. And I don't recall what you said in terms of the number, but you admitted that you did not see what we saw in the fight last night from him.
He's fought a few times. A couple have not gone very well for him. He's a strong kid.
Yeah.
And, Lauzon was, he's led the league or set the league record in hits last year. He's a big physical kid and things weren't going well. And he wanted, he was frustrated. So he wanted to go with Podkolzin. Like he dragged Podkolzin into the fight. And I think, at some point there, you probably realize, that guy knows what he's doing. Like he landed one right on the eject button there, and down Lauzon went. And there's not many fights like that anymore, thankfully. But oh my goodness, like that was, that wasn't much. That didn't go to the judges for decision.
Boy,
that was a win.
And he's been playing Podkolzin in his defense as a hockey player. Obviously, he's been playing better of late, right? I mean,
he is
a versatile piece.
He's a tough spot because, like, when he got drafted, right, he was 10th overall, stronger than everybody, like an absolute like powerhouse along the boards and out of the small spots against junior players. Then he gets into the NHL and the AHL, and it's hard to do that because he's not 6'3", right? And I think he can be a bottom 6 player. He's got his feet are a little heavy, and they've got him. Yeah. They've got him elevated right now in the lineup. I'm sure they thought they were going to get more from Jeff Skinner right now, and that's a spot like with Draisaitl that they had penciled Skinner in for, and maybe it'll be that in 10 games, but it's not now. And for Podkolzin, he must have felt 10 feet tall last night. And when you're looking for anything to stay in the lineup, that's one more thing he can put in his little toolbox. And they're like, okay, he's tough enough to play. He can look after himself. He could play in a tough building. And if that keeps you in the lineup longer, Drakes, maybe all of a sudden you make a few more plays, and then your game expands. Like, you never know what's going to be the catalyst for a player.
Washington Capitals head coach Spencer Carbery is going to join us shortly on Ray and Regs. But I want to wrap up headlines, Ray, with one quick thought on a play last. We never talk about empty netter. Well, maybe we will when or if Alex Ovechkin scores the 42nd goal to surpass Wayne Gretzky and it's an empty netter. Well, then we'll talk about empty net goals because it matters. Right. Austin Matthews scores an empty netter for the Toronto Maple Leafs on a snooker shot from the neutral zone, banks it off the boards, through the linesman, and into the empty net. And I think Mike Johnson suggested that there might have been some practice involved here. I doubt he practices that shot, but how skilled a play is that, or is it just more luck than anything?
Well, I mean, there is some luck. You're not bouncing the puck off the boards from your side at center very often trying to get it on net. But I think what I liked best about it was you actually thought of it as opposed to just chip it off the boards. And he's like, it's 2 goals.
Yeah.
Oh, I can score this. But you don't have 30 seconds to think about it, right? It's on your stick. And he's like, nah, this will work. And of course there's luck involved. I mean, but it still looks it's kind of neat. Like, at some point when it hit the boards, he's probably like, oh yeah, that's dead center.
That's good.
And, you have a giggle about it and good, put it on the board.
Those are your headlines. Thank you to our good friends at Tim Hortons.
Time to make tonight's picks. Oh, he is definitely a winner. Good thing it's easy and free to play.
My streak is on the line here. Fingers crossed, because it all comes down to this. I just love getting the chance to win prizes every game day.
The Tim's NHL Hockey Challenge is back. Play on game day.
Our interviews on Ray and Regs brought to us by Canadian Club Classic 18-year-old High Proof. Invite your senses to an elevated Canadian whiskey experience with Canadian Club. Spencer Carberry, our guest today on the Ray and Regs Hockey Podcast. Now, we're recording this on Friday morning, Spencer, and you're coming off the win over the Montreal Canadiens Thursday night. Obviously, the Capitals are rolling to start the year. And after the game against the Canadiens, Tom Wilson spoke about how tight this group is and how much fun you're having. Tell us, well, number one, how important that is, but given the number of new faces that you have in this lineup, how difficult it is to find that balance so quickly.
It was right at the top of our list priority-wise, because after July 1st, some of the moves that we made, we knew we were going to have a bunch of new faces in the locker room and in our lineup. And so as a staff, we were brainstorming right away of how we could bring this group together as quickly as possible, from team building to building our training camp to getting guys together in the summer. And it's gelled, I'll be honest with you, a lot quicker and seamlessly than I could have ever imagined, with the Pierre-Luc Dubois, Brandon Duhaimes, just go down the list, Radish, Jacob Chikrin has fit in, and so that's been a real luxury and a bonus for us. And I give a lot of credit to John Carlson and Tom Wilson and Dylan Strome as well, who's in that leadership group now with us. They do such an incredible job of bringing guys in, making them feel at home and they can be themselves. And then also there's another part of that of stressing and showing them how we do things here and what a practice looks like and how hard we compete and all the little things that go into the way that we want to play.
Spencer, last year we watched your team grind your way to a playoff spot. And this year, you guys are scoring 4 goals a game. And, you sort of listed some of the new guys, but how do you go from a team that, 2.5 goals was probably the roof last year, and now you're scoring, it seems like you score whatever you need?
Yeah. I think it's a combination. I think it's a combination of personnel. We made some, I give upstairs our general manager at the time and now new general manager Brian McClellan a ton of credit for the bold moves, moving Darcy Kemper, bringing Pierre-Luc Dubois in, which was a center position that we really needed, someone that could play against top lines. Stromer can, Nick Dowd can, but it just gives us another strong player down the middle. So personnel, confidence. Guys are very, very confident, which is a huge piece of it, of when we get into scoring situations. Guys are finishing right now. And then we spent a lot of time this summer. I talked about bringing the group together, but the other thing that we spent majority of our offseason on was how are we going to create more offense as a team? And what does that look like? And so we dove into the analytics, we dove into the film, we dove into some other teams that score at a high rate. What will we look like? And we really went to work on that. And then from day one of training camp, we've been preaching those concepts and those things that we want to do offensively. And thankfully, it's been successful thus far. And so it's been nice early in the season, because sometimes it takes a little bit for those things to get instilled and start to hit the ground running.
Well, one of the things, we did the game Friday night, which was it was wild the first 5 or 6 minutes. There was a bunch of goals, a mammoth tilt with Rempe and McElrath. And one of the things that was really apparent to me was, like, you guys don't hang out on the boards anymore. Like, when you win something off the wall, it's like, and you guys are big. Like, so when you're putting that together, like, do the guys get it right away, or is it a lot of repetition to change kind of maybe the way they would have thought before?
A little bit of both, but I totally agree. And I think maybe the like X's and O's part of it that I could maybe share is this team back in 2018 with Backy, Kuzi, Osh, they won a Stanley Cup. And they won a Stanley Cup they were, if you remember that year, they had the least amount of shots on goal per game out of any team in the league. And they won the Stanley Cup. And they were scoring so they were a very creative look for high quality scoring chances, because that's the way that they were built. And they had the personnel that could play that. Kuzi could hold on to a puck for 45 straight seconds, find a seam, and next thing you know, it's a one-timer in the back of the net. And so I think it was us recognizing what our strengths were, how we were built, how do we play that best suits our personnel. And exactly what you said, it had to morph a little bit. So last year, at the beginning of the year, we wanted to play like the 2018 team. We wanted to, and we're just not built like that anymore. And so we had to adjust and adapt. And we're trying to use our size. We're trying to get to the interior of the rink more, like you touched on.
How big of a role has patience played, Spencer, in the success of a couple of your younger guys too, right? I'm thinking of Connor McMichael. I'm looking at Protus. I mean, these are draft picks from 2019 that clearly have emerged as key pieces now to this season.
Yeah, they've just continued to chip away and get better and better and better and better. And I think everybody's path isn't always the same from a development standpoint. And we always put so much pressure on these. And I think Dubois is in a very similar situation too, because you're drafted in the first round and management, fans, you want it to be a 40-goal scorer. You want a 100-point guy. And there's a lot of value in players that, 25 goals and can play at both ends of the rink and penalty kill. And so I think learning that and finding the role and being patient with what they're going to be and embracing that and not forcing Alexei Protas to think that he's got to score 30 goals in this league. He can be a very effective player as a complement winger that can penalty kill, use his size, and hopefully blossoms into a point-producing guy. But I think the organization, and I coached those guys their first years in Hershey, and it's been a long road. Like he made the team. This would have been 2 years ago, and then he got sent back to the AHL. He played, I think, the first 7 or 8 games, and they said, "You know what? You're not quite ready yet." And he went back to the AHL, played the rest of the year, won the call, and then last year was his first real year as a bona fide NHL player. So putting a timeline, and everyone's a little bit different. And I think our organization's done a pretty good job of recognizing that and trying to embrace it.
Okay, everybody's a little different. You're a first-year head coach in the NHL. You walk in and there's a guy with 800 goals sitting there. I'm always curious with somebody like that it's fair to say the guys I played with that were anywhere near that, they sort of kind of had their own rules, and then but you still got to get the game's different, right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
you got to get the big fella there to play. Like how do you approach that? What's he like? I mean, I watch him on the bench the other night. He scored the 2 goals early, and it's like the whole place energized.
Yeah. Yes.
Like the bench energized, he energized, and I'm like, it was really cool to see because last year was a real struggle for about half of the year for Ovechkin.
Yeah, you're 100% accurate. When he is in the game, not even if he scores, but if he's getting chances and he's around the puck, everyone on the bench just starts to hold their breath a little bit, and even his teammates are, who's going? So it's a real thing, and then obviously it sort of goes to the building and the fans as well. I think like O's been he does, like, he's arguably the greatest goal scorer in the history of the game, and he's 39 years old, so it's my job. Like, I have to understand where he's at and push him in certain areas, and then understand that he's going to be a little bit, he can't do the things that he could at 25. So that's just sort of our relationship, and he's been great, especially since now we're a year and a half into this, and he knows me, I know him. I know when I can really lean on him and push him and say, hey, we need more in this situation. This isn't good enough. And he knows, and he looks at me and he'll go, yep, I know, I got to be better. And other times when, it's a back-to-back or fatigue or whatever it might be, or he needs to take a practice off, he knows that I'm going to respect that and understand that, I can't be going after him about a practice drill on a Thursday after we've just played 4 games in a row. Like, that's just not right. You're not going to get the most out of him. So it's that balance of understanding him, and we have a really good relationship now where he knows the expectations, and we can work off of one another.
Okay, I'm watching you guys in warm-up the other day, and so I ask our stats guy, because it strikes me as this is an impossibility. I go, how many goalies in the league catch with their right hand? And there's 3. Vejmelka in Utah, and your 2 guys. And so I was like, as a shooter in practice, that would drive me crazy. Yes. I would hate it. Because the rest of the league catches the other way. Like, do you guys have a third goalie that catches the other way? Or like,
we do.
Okay.
And going into the year, I was a little bit worried because a couple people asked that of are our shooters going to be off going into a game? And now I'm thinking, this is great. It's actually helping us.
Like, maybe they think less, right? Maybe they, I don't know.
And we earlier in the year, Andrew Mangiapane was, we were practicing shootouts. And so we wanted to, get comfortable in the shootout, and Mange missed a few in a row. And he's like, this is a waste of time. I can't do the move that I would normally do on our goal team.
Right. It's amazing to watch though, like when they both come out, and usually if there's a guy catching with his right hand, you don't even need to look at him. You know who it is. Now I'm like, well, is that Thompson? Is that Lindgren? Is that, It's so strange, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And Mange wasn't wrong. He's like, I have to do my reverse moves. Like, I would deke to the backhand, and now I got, he was right. Like, yeah.
So what's the next month say look like as you're building through off a good start? I mean, obviously it's great coming off a good start, but how do you keep it like just the next couple of games as opposed to guys starting to go, hey, you know what, maybe we are better, or maybe we are different than what other people think?
We've tried since I've got here, and it's just sort of the way that I look at things. It's a very short term, just focus on what's up next. And tomorrow is Columbus at home, 5:00 game. And we try to, as much as we can, stay in the moment. Now we'll talk about our team. Like, I thought last night's game was a good test for our group, and I'll try to spin way that challenge, because we've had a real difficult schedule, and now Montreal coming in after they lose at home to Seattle. So it was a different challenge for us. It's playing against a younger team where now all of a sudden there's some expectations of our team. And we've earned those expectations. We've played well. We've shown that we can play with the best teams in the league. And so now it's maintaining that standard even after a big win against the Metro Division leading New York Rangers. And now we got to be able to back that up. So what I'm getting at is we try to just really short-term focus and stay in the moment. And, it's going to become a grind. I get it. December, January, when you get into the dog days and that, and we'll try to do different things to keep things light. Days off, like today, I changed things up and gave the guys a day off because we do have a back-to-back coming up, Columbus and Carolina. So we went day off, stay away from the rink. Just the injured guys are coming in so that we can reset mentally and physically and be ready for tomorrow and the back-to-back with Carolina.
All right, Capitals head coach Spencer Carbery, our guest. One more for me, and I bet you didn't think we were going to talk about your playing days, Spencer. But I'm going through Spencer Carbery Hockey DB, and I guess the year that jumps out at me is 06-07 in the Central League with the Tulsa Oilers, right? 44 points, 157 penalty minutes. A bit of an outlier on DB. What was that year all about?
So that's sort of, even though my PIMs were low, I didn't take a lot of minors, but I actually fought a lot in the minors. And it was just because I learned quickly. So, I was a marginal skill player in college and Division III and that. And then I get to the Central League and eventually to the ECHL. And it was one of those moments where you're like, you get caught a couple times, you don't make a few teams, and you're like, okay, I'm not going to have a job if I don't find a role and find a way to stay in the lineup. And that's what it honestly became. Was I just tried to fill a role as a third line checking guy and provide energy, and I was biting off more than I could chew most nights on some of the guys. But yeah, I that's sort of what happened. The one year, I can't remember the exact year, but I want to say I had something like 30 majors, and it was a grind that season. Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. That was,
now, Spencer, you're not a giant guy. I mean, you must have been.
No.
You must have been punching uphill a lot of nights.
A lot of this. Big time. But I was a lefty, so I could I would try to get in there early with the lefts, and sometimes but then you get a reputation and everyone's like, he's a lefty, and I was like, oh no, I don't have the surprise anymore.
So right about midway through that year, are you thinking maybe I should look at coaching, or like, what are you? You're in the middle of 20 fights. Like, I got to think I got to look at a different thing to do here.
Honestly, Ray, and it sounds crazy. I'm like, I'm just trying to. I think I was making $700 a week at the time, and I'm like, I just got to keep making this $700.
Yes, that is true.
All right, man. Look, we'll let you go, Spencer. Thanks for doing this. Keep it going with the Washington Capitals. So many good stories in the East, across the league, in fact, but the Capitals are right there. So thanks again for joining us.
Absolutely. Anytime. Appreciate it.
Yep. See you soon, Spencer. Thanks a lot.
See you guys.
All right, Ray. Boy, so you've done a number of Washington Capitals games. So I guess over time, you'll get to know Spencer Carberry better. I know you're a big fan of how he coaches, his approach on the bench, off the bench. But take us into that world at ice level, because Ovechkin sits very near between the benches, right? So you get a bird's eye look at what the world of OV is like in game. What's it like? He seems to have a lot going on.
There is a beehive of activity around him. So he comes in the door and turns left and sits right against the boards. He's always like right next to me. And so I watch because I'm curious. And like some guys just sit there and then there's a change and they move down the bench. He just stays there the whole time. So takes his gloves off, gloves go on the boards. Helmet comes off, trainer behind him gives him a towel. Sometimes Ovi dries it, sometimes the trainer dries it. He's got his own water bottle, which is all the water bottles are right in front of the players. Ovi's is behind him. Trainer gives him the water bottle. Then he dries his face off. Then the towel goes back. It's like a one man to one man, like individual treatment here. And then he stands up half the time, so you got to look around him because he leans on the boards. And now they took away you can't half be on the boards or half over, right?
Yeah.
And so that took away a little bit of his movement on the bench. So now he just stands there. But as soon as the whistle blows and there's a commercial, I don't know why he does this. He gets off the bench and sits on the boards, like in between the benches. Like he sits there. And so he's like an eclipse. Like when he sits, like there's nowhere to go. And I'm staring at this 8 right in front of me. Like that's all I can see. And so every once in a while I go, you got a good view? You got a good view? And he laughs, right? And he's in his own thing, but there's so much. It's his own towel. Well, a lot of guys have a towel that they use, but own towel, helmet on, helmet off, gloves on, gloves off, stick, dry the blade, blade up, blade down. There's always something going on, and nobody says anything, right? Like, nobody's going to say anything to him. They just kind of, so the whole bench is moving up and down, and he's just sitting there. I'm totally amused by it.
Terrific guest, Spencer Carberry. I did not know that man had 30 fighting majors in the Central League.
Oh,
I wouldn't have
He's
known
not
that.
6 feet, eh? Like he must have been. Like I said to him, you must have been punching uphill a lot. But that's and now like he's quickly moved through the ranks. He was in Toronto. Well, he was in Hershey. I think this is really cool. He was in Hershey in the American League, which is Washington's farm team. Then he went to Toronto and coached the power play. And then they hired him as the head coach. So as he referenced, a lot of those young guys, McMichael and Protus, Ferrari, he would have coached them in the American League. Yeah. And now he's got them in the NHL. That's a real rarity.
Yeah. Thank you to the Capitals for making time with Spencer Carberry. What's your weekend like, Ray?
I'm actually, I've got 4 or 5 days off next week. And,
wow.
So I'm going to take a little detour and play some golf.
Shocking. Locally, or you're on one of your fancy trips?
Well, it depends how far does local region count?
I would say 90 minutes. 90 minutes or less. That's local.
The flight is longer than 90 minutes.
Oh, you dog.
So,
no details?
Yes.
No cheers?
Yeah, going to Arizona. Going to Arizona to play. Meet a few guys down there, and I'll be in Washington actually next Friday for the game there.
Very good. All right. Well, quiet weekend here. No big plans.
Nothing?
No, we're recording on Friday here. I've got a decision to make. Do I go to a buddy's cottage for a couple of days, just to kind
but okay, hang on. Is that the cottage that every time you go up there, it's a shenanigan fest?
No, this is a different cottage. Okay.
Yeah. You got good friends with cottages. Good for you.
I know. It's just, with the weather is cooling off, and I'm a bit of a fair weather guy when it comes to golf and cottages and whatnot. But what are the other options? I either go with a buddy, hang out at the cottage, stare at the lake for a day or two, or, go and watch golf or hockey or football in a pub somewhere. So this is probably the healthier option.
Cottage is probably better. Although, you'd be fine the other way too.
All right, buddy. Have a good weekend. And enjoy that trip.
Yeah, will for sure. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks to Spencer Carbery.
And thank you to our sponsors who continue to support Ray and Riggs and make the pod possible. Our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey, and as always, Tim Hortons. Have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe.